All right, well, in considering what to do this final assignment on, I remembered something that I'd been told when I was studying German as an undergraduate at Utah State. My German teacher said something interesting. She said, "Can you learn to ride a bike from being told how to learn to ride a bike? You can't. You have to get on the bike every day until you learn. Can you speak German from being told how to speak German? You can't. You have to speak it every day until you learn how." And it struck me that this approach to learning by doing is very reminiscent of Constructivism. So that is what I would like to do this final multimedia project on. Constructivism is basically learning, which occurs by interacting with an environment. The learner constructs their own learning with the environment and the elements of that environment that they are given. Now, constructivism differs from objectivism or instructivism in that the student doesn't learn something simply by being told about it. Instead, students learn through application and problem solving. And I will examine the differences between constructivism and objectivism a little later. But first I want to give an example, or rather a second example of what I mean by learning through application and problem solving. In my line of work, I write a technical manual about a software product. And more than one person has gotten the idea that because I have written about every aspect of the software, I must know it inside and out. This is a screenshot of RoboHelp where I author the manual, and just part of the table of contents here. You can see it's pretty long, and I have written pretty much all of these topics or revised them at some point. So people think that because I've had exposure to every topic I must know it, but the truth is I don't. For example, the chapter that I just finished writing for this manual is called Audit, Master Control Audit. And it was very complicated and very difficult, and I needed a lot of help to write it. You see how many topics there are here under Audit. It goes all the way down to there. And in writing all of these audit topics, I did not come out of this being an expert on how to use audit in Master Control. Now what I learn when I write about audit or any of these other topics is how to write a technical manual. Because when I write about them, I am applying principles that I learned when I studied technical writing, also as an undergrad at Utah State. And occasionally I'm presented with a problem that I need to work through, which pertains to the manual itself rather than the content of the manual. So in writing about audit, I'm telling people how to do an audit, but I'm also teaching myself how to write manuals. And if I really want to learn audit, I would need to do audits. Now, as I said, to compare the objectivist and constructivist modes of thinking, I took this table from the objectivist versus constructivist design reading that we had, I think, in the third week of the semester. And just to examine a few of the differences in the analysis of the instructional needs. For objectivism, you focus on content, you focus on the learner, you focus on the needs of the instruction and what the goals of the instruction are. Whereas in constructivism, you focus on context. You're still focusing on the learner, but you base it on a problem, and you identify the key concepts that you want the learner to have when the learning is completed. And in designing the instruction with objectivism, you focus on instructional objectives. You analyze each task that the learner has to proceed to get to those objectives, and you have criterion referenced assessment. In constructivism, you have goals for things that you want the learner to know. You identify learning sequences, and you have context-driven evaluations. In the developing of the material, you develop instructional materials in objectivism. And in constructivism, you construct learning resources and artifacts. You come up with things that the learner can use to work through problems or situations or environments in which they can immerse themselves. Implementation. In objectivism, the teacher conveys and directs while the learner receives and acquires knowledge, and the focus is objective attainment of knowledge for the learner. In constructivism, a teacher consults and facilitates the learning that the learner engages in, whereas it's kind of inverted. The learner is directing and controlling the pace of the learning and the direction of the learning, because they are the ones immersed in the environment and deciding where they're going to go and what they're going to do, with the focus being problem solving. And finally, when you evaluate the instruction, in objectivism you go by what the learner knows and how they know it, knowing how, whereas in constructivism it is based on how a learner knows what they know and how they can get around within the topic that they are working on. Constructional design focuses on the creation of learning environments that enable and support individual construction by engaging in design and invention tasks. Now, some may say that constructivism is the better teaching method, while others will lean toward the more traditional objectivist approach. And I happen to think that constructivism really is supplemented by objectivism most of the time, and combining the two is the most effective means of imparting instruction to someone. Because truthfully, how can you apply something when you don't know anything about it? For example, going back to the Moodle course that I created for this class, I did it on the Battle of the Somme in World War I, because World War I is an area in which I have great interest and something that I would love to teach a course on someday, in whatever situation. And probably the defining problem of World War I was how to break through the enemy's line of trenches. Here is an aerial view of the Western Front in, I think, 1917. You've got the British trenches here, the German trenches here, and that was what they did. They spent all their time figuring out how to make a breakthrough, and as you can see, it was next to impossible because of the lines of defense they had. And a question like that would, I think, make a great constructivist activity. Give the students an assignment where, say, they're a general of an army on either side, and a situation like this is what their army is facing. So the assignment is to come up with a battle plan that would achieve a breakthrough. Now, a student couldn't really begin to work on a problem like that without first knowing about World War I. They would have to know about the trenches. They would have to know about all the other background. And I think that would be most effectively imparted with some objectivist style direct teaching, some lecturing, some reading, I think. And then when the students have that information, they can immerse themselves in the environment and begin to puzzle out how they would solve the problem that's been placed before them in a constructivist style. And also along those lines, constructivism can be scaffolded even though it is driven by the learner. Consider the example of audits again in the technical manual that I wrote. As I said before, I would learn audit. I would learn the audit function in the software by doing audits. But until I became proficient in that software, I would certainly rely on the manual and on the advice of more experienced users to guide me and answer my questions as I worked through this. This is something that I posted on the Moodle message boards when we posted about constructivism. I said learning is constructed by the learner, but with design elements in place to ensure that learning is guided in the direction that will provide the correct outcome. When there is no one correct answer, I would think that the correct outcome is the one which proves its usefulness when applied. So if I become proficient in auditing, I have done it through a combination of application and guidance. If I become fluent in German, which I haven't, it's because I studied German and then I spoke it. So that is my take on constructivism. I hope I've done it justice, and I hope I understand it well enough to start using it, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.